Welcome, science friends, to ecological succession, secondary succession. So we talked about primary succession already. We start from bare rock. Well, secondary succession starts from already established soil. So we don't need all of the steps that it takes to create the soil. We're starting from soil. And we're starting from soil because there was some sort of disturbance or force that has occurred where most, if not all of the plants have been eliminated. So if there's a forest fire and it burns down a huge part of an ecosystem, that would be a great place for secondary succession to start. Some examples of where we might see secondary succession would be after a wildfire, where a fire comes and it burns up all of the plant matter, meaning that there isn't food or shelter for other animals. So starting from scratch as long as there is soil. Could be after a tornado that blows everything around, rips trees out of the ground, starting from the soil. After a flood, so if an area gets flooded, it might drown a bunch of the plants and animals, starting from soil. It's not going to wash away all of the dirt. There should be soil there. Could be human land clearing. We see this a lot where humans come in and we take out all of the vegetation. Again, if you take out the vegetation, there will be no animals there because there's no food and shelter. Secondary succession always starts with small plants whose seeds can be carried by the wind or by animal droppings. So it has to be somewhere where plant seeds can land. Again, we need the soil and the dirt there. But weeds are a great place for secondary succession to start because many of those, like dandelions and ragweed, have those little tiny seeds that can float along on the wind. Or we could see maybe birds flying by that poop out seeds, and then those are great places for the secondary succession to start as well. It takes much less time for secondary succession to reach its climax community than primary succession because we don't have to break down the rock. So primary succession takes forever because most of that time is breaking down the rock into soil. Once soil is established and we have some place for plants to grow, things go much more quickly. So the order of events are slightly different. The order of events stay the same, but some of the species are going to be labeled differently. So again, because we already have soil, our pioneer species, the first ones on the scene, are going to be a little bit bigger. It could be things like annual plants and grasses. It could be some insects because, again, we can start with bigger plants because we have the soil there. The intermediate species in the climax community are going to be about the same. Again, it just takes less time to get to that end product of the climax community. Here's a quick little image to show the progression of events if we start with something like a wildfire. So a wildfire comes, it wipes out a climax community, but after everything is put out and there's no more fire, we're going to start with soil. Again, there aren't very many plants and animals, but if we start from the soil, it's going to go much quicker. We can start with those smaller plants. Smaller plants bring insects, things grow, and it's basically the same process. It's just that we're starting from soil. So secondary succession, not much different once we get to the soil part of primary succession. In summary, pioneer species is the first ones to come and colonize, whether that's bare rock or it could be in a secondary community, bare soil, but they're the first species to arrive at an ecosystem or a habitat. They help either build the soil if it's primary succession and to provide nutrients for the coming more advanced species of the climax community. Again, pioneer species will be different depending on the type of succession. Primary succession, those primary species are mosses and lichens. Secondary succession, they are those small plants and maybe even some insects. New species of plants displace existing plants because their seeds are better able to become established. So something like a weed is not going to stay for very long, but something like a pine tree will. So those pine trees are going to take over where those weeds used to be, and this will help change the environment and move it towards that climax community. Newly arriving species can alter the physical conditions of a community, and often it helps other species to become established. So again, with that previous example of the weeds and the pine trees are going to change the environment. They're going to provide much more habitat for things like birds and small mammals like squirrels. They can provide shade for more shade-tolerant plants and a lot more food because they produce pine cones and sap and all sorts of things. So as communities become more and more established towards that climax community, they can help provide space and nutrients for those newer incoming species. Animals always come in after the plants because plants are producers. We can't have animals without producers. So animals always come in after those producers. Eventually, we will reach that climax community that is stable, and it will just be there, and it will be very successful. It'll do its thing, all those plants and animals working together in that food web, until some event happens like a fire or a flood. Those disturbances, like a wildfire, will start the process all over again. So a climax community can go on indefinitely, but sometimes things happen and ecosystems need to start over. That was secondary succession. I hope it helped.